The research station sat on the edge of Vraxi territory, like a small metal box surrounded by giants. Daewon Kim had been there for 3 months now, studying the most dangerous predators in known space. The Vraxi stood 8 feet tall, with black scales that shimmered in the light. They had claws that could cut through steel, and 4 eyes that missed nothing. Every human who came to this world signed papers that said they understood the risks. Death was always close when living among apex predators. Daewon worked in his lab that afternoon, recording notes about Vraxi pack behavior. His window looked out over the compound's neutral zone, a stretch of grass where the Vraxi allowed their young to play under watchful eyes. He heard strange sounds and looked up from his work. 3 small shapes moved in the grass. Cubs. They were young, maybe 5 or 6 in human years, though Vraxi aged differently. 2 cubs played together, chasing and tumbling. The third sat alone near the fence. This one was smaller than the others. It held something close to its chest and made soft, chirping sounds. Daewon's translator picked up the words through his window. Broken. Won't work. Broken. The small voice sounded so sad that Daewon felt his chest tighten. He knew the rules. Humans stayed away from Vraxi cubs. The parents were protective and deadly. Breaking this rule could start an incident that would end the whole research program. But that small voice kept chirping, and Daewon found himself standing up. His hand moved to the door controls before his brain could stop him. The door opened. Daewon stepped outside into the warm air. All 3 cubs froze instantly. 6 eyes locked onto him. No, 12 eyes. Each cub had 4. They stared at him with the focus of born hunters. Daewon's survival instincts screamed at him to run back inside. Instead, he took a slow breath and walked toward the small cub. The other 2 cubs moved, placing themselves between Daewon and their smaller companion. They were protecting the little one. Daewon stopped walking and slowly lowered himself to his knees. He made himself smaller, less threatening. May I see? He asked quietly. The small cub looked at him with wide eyes. Its scales were lighter than the others, still soft with youth. It looked down at the thing in its claws, then back at Daewon. The cub made a decision. Small claws extended, offering the object. Daewon took it carefully. It was a toy. A small sphere made of metal and plastic. When it worked, it would float and show pictures of stars and planets. Children across the galaxy loved these toys, but this one was dark and still. Daewon turned it over in his hands. The anti-gravity unit had come loose inside. A capacitor was burned out. The 2 larger cubs crept closer. They watched Daewon's hands with intense focus. He pulled his multi-tool from his pocket. We have a blind. We learned from, moving slowly so they could see everything he did. He opened the toy's casing. Inside, the wires were a mess. He straightened them carefully, reconnecting the anti-gravity unit. The burned capacitor needed replacing. He had a spare in his field kit. He always carried spare parts. Daewon worked while 3 young predators watched. His hands did not shake. He aligned the new capacitor, sealed the connections, and closed the casing. Then, he pressed the activation button. The sphere hummed. It lifted from his palm and floated in the air between them. Holographic stars bloomed around it, filling the space with soft light. The small cub made a sound Daewon had never heard before. It was pure joy. The cub reached up, and the sphere settled into its claws. The sad chirping transformed into something like purring, mixed with growling. The cub clutched the toy and spun in a circle. The other 2 cubs joined in the happy sounds. One of them, a female with a small crest, patted Daewon's arm with her claws carefully retracted. The 3rd cub, a male with dark markings, touched the floating sphere with wonder. Then Daewon heard new sounds. Heavy footsteps. Adult Vraxi were coming fast. He looked up and saw 2 massive forms running toward them. His heart jumped into his throat. These were the parents. They had seen a strange human kneeling among their cubs with a tool in his hand. The female adult arrived first. Her crest flared up in a threat display. The male moved to the side, flanking. This was hunting behavior. Day one froze. He kept his hands visible and empty. The multi-tool lay on the ground where he had set it down. The small cub ran to the female adult, chirping excitedly. It showed her the floating toy. The stars, reflected in the adult's 4 eyes. She looked at the toy, at the happy cub, then at Day one. Confusion replaced some of the threat in her posture. The male adult spoke. His voice was deep and rumbling. "You touched our cub. Our laws allow us to take blood for this." Day one's mouth was dry, but he managed to speak. The cub was upset. "I only repaired the toy." Another voice joined them. "Wait." Avraxi Day one, recognized, approached. This was Hyojin, the station's liaison. She worked with both humans and Vraxi. The human brought comfort to distressed young. By ancient custom, this is protected. The debt of comfort is sacred. The two parents looked at each other. Something passed between them without words. The female leaned down and sniffed near Day one. Vraxi could smell emotions. She would know if he was afraid or had meant harm. Day one had been afraid when the adults arrived. But not before. Not when he was fixing the toy. The female straightened. She looked at Day one for a long moment. "You are strange. Human. Small and soft. But my cub is happy." The male still looked uncertain. "What is your name?" "Human who fixes broken things." Day one Kim. "I am Jae-sung. This is Sul-hee. The small one you helped is Tae-young, our son." Jae-sung gestured to the other cubs. "Hana, our daughter. Minho, our nephew." Day one nodded to each of them. "I am glad I could help." Sul-hee's crest lowered. The threat was gone. "We will remember this. Come, cubs." Tae-yang. "Thank the human." Tae-young chirped at Dai-one and carefully touched his hand with one small claw. Then the family walked away together. The cubs kept looking back at him. Hyojin waited until they were gone. "That was very dangerous, Day one. I know, but also very kind." She tilted her head in the Vraxi way of showing approval. "They will talk about this. The cubs especially. You have made an impression." 5. Day one picked up his multi-tool and walked back to his lab. His hands started shaking only after he closed the door. He had just knelt among predator cubs and lived. More than that, he had helped one. The memory of Tae-young's happy sounds made him smile despite his fear. That evening, as the sun set over the Vraxi homeworld, Day one looked out his window. 3 small shapes sat near the fence, looking toward his lab. Their eyes glowed softly in the growing darkness. They were watching him. He raised one hand in a small wave. 3 small claws waved back. Daewon did not know it yet. But everything had changed. He had shown the cubs something new. He had shown them that broken things could be fixed. That someone would take time and care to make something work again. For young predators, who lived in a culture of strength and dominance, this was a completely new idea. The cubs would remember. And tomorrow, they would return. Daewon woke early the next morning. He went through his normal routine, making coffee and checking his research notes. He opened his lab door to let in fresh air and almost stepped on something. A stick lay on his doorstep. Not a random stick. This one was broken into 2 clean pieces and arranged in a cross pattern. He bent down and picked up the pieces. They were still slightly damp with morning dew. Someone had placed them here recently. Daewon heard a small sound and looked up. Taeyang sat about 10 feet away, watching him carefully. The small cub chirped once. Daewon looked at the stick pieces, then at Taeyang. Understanding came slowly. "Do you want me to fix this?" Taeyang chirped again and made a gesture with small claws, pushing them together like he was joining something. Daewon smiled. He went back into his lab and found some adhesive tape. He carefully wrapped the tape around both pieces, binding them together. Then he walked over and presented the repaired stick to Taeyang. The cub's reaction was immediate and joyful. Taeyang took the stick and spun in circles, making happy sounds. Then, the cub raced away toward the compound, stick held high like a trophy. Daewon shook his head, amused. Cubs were cubs, no matter the species. He went back to his work. By afternoon, 6 more items waited outside his door. Daewon stood looking at them with growing disbelief. There was another stick with a small bend in it, a rock with a natural crack running through it, a leaf with a torn edge, a clump of dirt that fell apart when he touched it, some shed scales that Vraxi cubs lost as they grew, an energy bar wrapper with a tiny rip. 3 cubs sat nearby, watching. Taeyang, Hana, and Minho. They looked at him with hopeful eyes. "You brought all these for me to fix?" Daewon asked. 3 heads nodded. The rock was not actually broken. The crack was natural, part of how the rock formed. But Hana sat next to it, looking so hopeful that Daewon could not refuse. He took the rock inside and carefully filled the crack with a clear sealant. When it dried, he buffed it until it shined. He brought it back out and gave it to Hana. She held it like precious treasure. The leaf could not really be repaired, but Daewon pressed it between 2 pieces of clear film to preserve it. Minho accepted it with solemn ceremony, as if Daewon had given him gold. One by one, Daewon fixed each item. He wrapped the energy wrapper with transparent tape. He pressed the dirt back together and sprayed it with a bonding agent so it held its shape. He treated each item with care and attention. Every cub who received their repaired object back made sounds of pure happiness. Word spread quickly among young Vraxi. By the end of the week, Daewon's morning routine had changed completely. He woke early because he knew cubs would be waiting. They arrived at dawn with their offerings. Now, 12 cubs knew about the human who fixed things. The items they brought became more creative. One cub named Bo-Ra brought a bowl of water. "Too wet," Bo-Ra declared seriously. "Needs fixing." Daewon managed not to laugh. He took the bowl inside and added a single drop of blue food coloring to the water. He brought it back out. "Fixed. Now it is special water." Bo-Ra's eyes went wide. She carefully carried the bowl away, moving slowly so she would not spill a drop of her special blue water. Some cubs brought genuinely broken toys. Taewon fixed these carefully, enjoying the challenge. Other cubs brought things that were perfectly fine, but they declared needed help anyway. A rock that looked sad. A stick that was too straight and needed to be more interesting. A handful of grass that was too green. Daewon helped with all of it. He painted a small happy face on the sad rock. He carefully bent the too straight stick into an artistic curve. He tied the too green grass into small braids. Each cub left happy. The adult Vraxi watched all this with growing fascination. Hyojin stopped by Daewon's lab one afternoon. "This is unprecedented," she said. "Cubs bring prey to parents to practice hunting. They bring treasures to elders for approval. But bringing broken things to be mended? We have no tradition for this. No cultural context. Maybe you are creating a new tradition," Daewon suggested. Hyojin tilted her head thoughtfully. "Perhaps. The parents talk about you. Some are concerned. Others are curious. You have been invited to evening meal with Sul-hee and Jae-sung." Daewon felt nervous about this. Sharing a meal with Vraxi meant entering their home, their private space. It was a significant honor, and also somewhat dangerous. But refusing would be an insult. That evening, he went to Sul-hee and Jae-sung's dwelling. It was larger than his lab, decorated with hunting trophies and family symbols. Taeyang and Hana greeted him at the door with excited chirps. They pulled him inside to see their collection of fixed objects, displayed on a special shelf. Every stick, rock, and toy had its own place. The meal was roasted meat from a local animal. Day 1 was careful to follow Vraxi customs, eating only after the parents had taken their portions. The food was actually good, seasoned with herbs he did not recognize. Sulhi watched him eat, then asked a question. Why do you fix things that are not broken? The cubs test you. They bring nonsense. Yet you treat each item as if it matters. Day 1 thought about this while he chewed. He swallowed and answered honestly. Because to them, it does matter. That rock Hana brought? To me, it is just a rock. To her, it is special enough to bring to someone she is learning to trust. That trust is worth more than my time. Jae Sung's tail curled in a gesture Day 1 was learning meant respect. Humans are small, weak compared to us. No claws, no scales, soft skin that tears easily. We wondered how your species survived to reach the stars. Now I begin to understand. You build where we would fight. You fix where we would replace. We had to learn cooperation, Day 1 said. Humans are not apex predators. We survived by working together, by helping each other. Sulhi leaned forward. This is why the cubs bring you things. They sense something we adults have forgotten or never knew. That asking for help is not weakness. The conversation continued through the meal. Day 1 learned that Sulhi worked in the Vraxi Defense Forces. Jae Sung was an engineer who designed ships. They asked him about Earth, about human families, about his work. In turn, they told him about Vraxi history, their wars and conquests, their complicated relationship with other species. When Day 1 left that night, Taeyang walked him to the door. The small cub pressed something into Day 1's hand. It was the original hovering sphere. The first toy Day 1 had fixed. Keep safe, Taeyang said in careful words. You made it work. You are fixer. Important. Day 1 felt emotions swell in his chest. Thank you, Taeyang. I will keep it safe. Walking back to his lab under alien stars, Day 1 realized something had shifted. He had come here to study the Vraxi. But they were studying him too. More than that, the cubs were teaching their parents something new. They were teaching them that the small, weak human had value. Not because he was strong, but because he was kind. The next morning, 17 items waited outside his door. More cubs had joined the daily ritual. Day 1 looked at the collection of sticks, rocks, toys, and various objects. He picked up his tools and got to work. Each item deserved his full attention. Each cub deserved to know their offering mattered. By the time he finished, the sun was high in the sky. 20 cubs sat in a semicircle around him, waiting patiently. One by one, he returned their fixed items. One by one, they made sounds of joy. Some touched his hand gently with retracted claws before leaving. Others simply bobbed their heads in thanks. The last cub to approach was one Day 1 had not seen before. This one was smaller than the others and moved with a limp. The cub held nothing. I have nothing broken to bring, the cub said quietly. But I watched. You are kind. Can I sit with you sometimes? Day 1 felt his throat tighten. Yes, anytime you want. What is your name? Tae-ho. Welcome, Tae-ho. You do not need to bring me anything. Your company is enough. Tae-ho's eyes brightened. The small cub settled down next to Day 1's knee. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the other cubs play with their repaired treasures. Day 1 understood then that he was not just fixing objects, he was fixing something deeper. Something these young predators needed but had never known to ask for. 3 weeks had passed since Day 1 fixed the first toy. His new routine felt natural now. Every morning, cubs brought him things to fix. Every morning, he treated each item with care. He had repaired 43 toys, 67 rocks, countless sticks, and one very confused beetle that a cub insisted was broken because it would not stay still. Late evening came, and Day 1 was in his lab cataloging the day's repairs. 17 items today, including a stone that was declared lonely and needed a companion stone to keep it company. Day 1 had found a matching stone and presented them as a pair. The cub had been delighted. Scratching sounds came from his door. Not the playful tapping he had grown used to. This was frantic, desperate. Day 1 jumped up and opened the door fast. Hana and Minho stood there, both making distressed sounds. Between them, they were trying to drag another cub. This one was limp, barely moving. His scales were dark with stress and his breathing came in short, weak gasps. Day 1's blood went cold. This was not a game. This was real. The cub was dying. "Fix! Fix!" Hana cried, her voice breaking on the word. It was the word she had learned from their morning games. But this was not a game. The injured cub was Young-soo, Minho's brother. Day 1 had met him a few times. Young-soo was quiet and thoughtful, always watching before joining play. Now his eyes were half closed and his small body trembled. Day 1 forced himself to think past the panic. He hit his emergency beacon, the signal that would bring help. Then, he carefully pulled Young-soo inside and laid him on the floor. Hana and Minho pressed close, unwilling to leave their friend. Day 1's hands shook as he ran his medical scanner over Young-soo. One leg was swollen to twice its normal size. The scales there were mottled with wrong colors. The scanner beeped warnings. Toxin. Something poisonous was in Young-soo's system. His medical kit was designed for humans. Vroxy biology was completely different. Different blood chemistry, different organs, different reactions to medicine. What helped a human might kill a Vroxy, but he had to do something. Young-soo's breathing was getting weaker. Day 1 remembered his xenobiology training. Vroxy toxin responses involved chemicals similar to human histamines. He grabbed an anti-inflammatory from his general medical supplies. His hands steadied as he made calculations. Dose by weight. Vroxy cubs weighed about 40 pounds. The medicine was strong. Too much would be poison. Too little would do nothing. He decided on a dose and administered it under Young-soo's tongue, where it would absorb quickly. Then he pulled the small cub into his lap and wrapped him in a thermal blanket from his emergency kit. Hana and Minho immediately pressed against them, adding their body heat. Young-soo needed to stay warm. "You did good," Day 1 told them quietly. "You brought him to me quickly. That was very smart." Hana made small whimpering sounds. "Is he broken? Can you fix?" Day 1's heart broke at the question. "I am trying. Help is coming." The door burst open. Vroxy medical teams rushed in, all sharp efficiency and advanced equipment. They had been monitoring Day 1's beacon and expected to find a human emergency. Instead, they found a human on the floor, covered in 3 Vroxy cubs, holding the injured one carefully. The lead medic was named Gay 1. She scanned Young-soo quickly. Swamp venom. From the marshes near the compound. Usually fatal, if untreated for an hour. She looked at Day 1. "What did you give him?" Day 1 told her. Gay 1's eyes widened. "That should not work on Vroxy. But his breathing has improved. You bought him time. We need to move him now." They transferred Young-soo to a medical stretcher. Day 1 tried to stand and follow, but his legs would not hold him. The adrenaline was leaving his system, and he started to shake. Strong hands caught him. Sul-hee had arrived. She lifted Day 1 easily, like he weighed nothing. "You saved my nephew. Come. You will wait with family." The medical center was bright and sterile. Day 1 sat in the waiting area, surrounded by Vroxy. Sul-hee and Jae-sung stayed close. Taeyang and Hana pressed against his sides. Minho sat at his feet. Other cubs from the morning ritual had come too, drawn by news of the emergency. They filled the space with their presence, offering what comfort they could. Adult Vroxy filled the rest of the room. Warriors, engineers, teachers. They stood in small groups, talking quietly. All of them watched Day One with expressions he could not fully read. Two Vraxi approached him. These were massive, even for their species. Old battle scars marked their scales. These were Young-Su's parents, Sunja and Hyun-woo. Day One stood up, expecting anger. He had injected their cub with alien medicine. If Young-Su died, it would be his fault. Sunja moved close. Then she did something that made the entire room fall silent. She pressed her forehead to Day One's forehead. It was the highest gesture of trust in Vraxi culture. Day One stood frozen, afraid to move. The cubs brought him to you because they knew, Sunja said. Her voice was thick with emotion. They knew you fix what is broken. They trusted you. Even when the broken thing was flesh and bone. Hyun-woo spoke next. His deep voice carried through the room. Blood debt becomes blood bond. You are pack now, human. You are family. Day One did not trust his voice. He nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. The wait stretched on. 2 hours passed. Then 3. Cubs fell asleep against Day One's legs and sides. He stayed still, letting them rest. Adults brought him water and food. They asked him questions about Earth, about his family, about anything to pass the time. He answered when he could, his mind still half-focused on the doors that led to where Young-Su fought for life. Gi-won finally emerged. The room fell silent. She looked tired, but she was smiling. Young-Su will live. The combination of the human's emergency treatment and our medicine worked. His body is clearing the toxin. He will recover fully. The sound that went through the room was like a wave of relief. Sunja's legs gave out, and Hyun-woo caught her. They held each other, shaking with released tension. Daewon felt hands touching him gently. Cubs and adults both, expressing thanks in their way. He accepted it all, still numb with his own relief. 2 days later, they allowed visitors. Daewon entered the medical room quietly. Young-Su lay in a bed designed for Vraxi cubs, medical equipment monitoring his vital signs. His scales had returned to their normal color. The swelling in his leg was gone. Young-Su's eyes opened when Daewon approached. The cub looked at him for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice hoarse but clear. Fixed? Daewon's control broke. He laughed and cried at the same time, emotion overwhelming him. Yes. Fixed. Young-Su's small claw reached out. Daewon took it gently. I was scared too, Daewon admitted. But Hana and Minho were very brave. They brought you to me so quickly. They said you fix everything. Even broken cubs. Young-Su's eyes were already closing again. Exhaustion pulling him back to sleep. They were right. Daewon stayed until Young-Su slept. Sunja and Hyun-woo entered as he was leaving. They stopped him with a gesture. We need you to understand something, Hyun-woo said. What you did was dangerous. You could have killed our son with wrong medicine. Daewon nodded. I know. I am sorry. But I could not do nothing. We know, Sunja said. That is why we are grateful. You saw a cub dying, and you acted. You risked human law. Risked your place here. Risked our anger. You acted because it was right. That is courage. That is honor. They left him with those words. Daewon walked back to his lab slowly, his mind full. News of what happened had spread through the compound. Adult Vraxi. He passed, nodded to him with respect. Some touched his shoulder briefly as they went by. When he reached his lab, cubs were waiting. More than before. Taeyang, Hana, Minho, Bora, Taeho, and at least 20 others. They sat in quiet patience. When Day One appeared, they stood as one. We brought nothing today, Taeyang said, speaking for them all. We came to say thank you. You saved Young-Su. You are not just fixer of toys. You are fixer of everything. One by one, the cubs approached and touched Day One's hand with their claws retracted. It was a gesture of trust and affection. Day one accepted each touch, feeling the weight of what he had become to them. He was not just the human researcher anymore. He was family. He was pack. He was the one who fixed broken things, whether those things were toys or lives. And that responsibility settled on his shoulders with both weight and warmth. News traveled fast through the Vraxi clans. Within days, everyone knew the story. The human had saved a dying cub with strange medicine and quick thinking. The human who fixed toys had fixed a life. Reactions were not simple. The clan elders met in council. Day one was not there, but Hyojin told him what happened. An elder named Dong Hyun spoke against him. Dong Hyun was old and traditional, scarred from countless battles. This human injected unknown chemicals into a cub. What if young Su had died? This is dangerous. But Sul-hee stood and argued back. He acted when we could not. Young Su would have died waiting for medical teams. The human risked everything to save a Vraxi life. That deserves honor, not punishment. The debate grew heated. Traditional warriors worried about human influence. Younger Vraxi pointed to the results. Young Su lived. That was what mattered. Then Sunja and Hyunwoo spoke. Sunja's words were simple and powerful. My cub breathes because the human understood what my other cubs could not say with words. Hana and Minho brought their friend to someone they trusted. The human listened. He saw their distress and acted. That is wisdom. That is strength. The council made their decision. Daewon's actions were acceptable under emergency circumstances. More than that, they gave him a title. Den, friend. It was an ancient honor, not given to an outsider in 400 years. It meant he was accepted into the clan structure itself. He had rights and protections usually reserved for Vraxi only. Hyojin delivered the news to Daewon in his lab. She said, "The council has never moved this fast to accept an alien. You have changed something fundamental." Quote, "I just fixed a toy and helped a sick cub," Daewon protested. "No, you did much more. You showed our young that kindness has value. Now that lesson is spreading." She was right. Changes started appearing throughout the compound. The cubs' behavior evolved. They still brought items for repair every morning, but the items changed. Now they brought genuinely broken things. Toys that truly did not work. Tools that needed fixing. One cub brought a friendship token, a carved stone that had cracked, and asked if Daewon could save it. He could, and did. The cub held the repaired token like sacred treasure. Something new began. The cubs asked Daewon to teach them. "Show us how to fix things," Taeyong requested. "We want to learn." So Daewon started teaching. He showed them how to use simple tools, how to see what was wrong with a broken object, how to be patient and careful. The cubs learned quickly, their natural intelligence and focus serving them well. In return, they taught him Vraxi skills. Hana showed him how to read scent markers. Bo-Ra taught him clan signs, the body language that let Vraxi communicate without words. Daewon was a terrible student at physical skills, but the cubs were patient with him the way he was patient with them. Adult Vraxi began to watch these lessons. At first, they stood at a distance. One evening, Jae-sung approached Daewon with something wrapped in cloth. "I have a request," he said formally. "This is a clan medallion. It is 400 years old. It cracked during a ceremony last year. Our finest smiths say it cannot be mended without destroying its history and markings. But you preserve things. Can you help?" Daewon unwrapped the medallion carefully. It was beautiful work, metal forged and etched with incredible detail. A crack ran through the center, but it was clean. The two pieces still fit together perfectly. "I can try," Daewon said. "But I need time. This is important, and I will not rush." He worked for 3 days. He used micro-welding equipment, borrowed from the station's engineering department. He used a bonding agent that dried, clear, and strong. He worked under magnification, ensuring every detail was preserved. The crack would still be visible, but the medallion would be whole and strong. When he returned it to Jae-sung, the large Vraxi said nothing for a long time. He turned the medallion over in his claws, examining every surface. Then he looked at Day-1 with something like wonder. The marks are perfect. The history remains. But it is whole again. He paused. You understand something we do not. That being broken and being repaired is part of the story, not something to hide. Word spread further. Adult Vraxi from other parts of the compound started visiting. They brought broken items. A warrior brought a weapon that had shattered in combat. An engineer brought a piece of the first ship she had designed. A teacher brought an old book with torn pages. Day-1 helped them all. He fixed what could be fixed. When something could not be fully repaired, he stabilized it and preserved it. He treated every item with respect. Late one night, Sul-hee came to his lab. She sat down across from him, her large frame barely fitting in the human-sized chair. We need to talk, she said. The elders are concerned. Not angry, but worried. About what? About change. We Vraxi have been the same for thousands of years. We conquer. We hunt. We fight. We take what we need because we are strong enough to take it. But you. She gestured to the workshop area of his lab, full of repaired items waiting to be returned. You show another way. You mend. You fix. You give without taking. Is that bad? It is terrifying, Sul-hee said honestly. Because it works. Cubs who learn from you are different. They share more. They help each other. They look for solutions before fighting. These are not Vraxi behaviors. Maybe they are, Day-1 suggested. Maybe you always had this in you but never had reason to show it. Sul-hee was quiet for a moment. The elders fear you change us. But I think you do not change us. You show us what we could be. That is more frightening. Because now we have choice. More cubs arrived from distant parts of the territory. Cubs Day-1 had never met. A young female named Mi-sun came from a rival clan. She brought a broken family heirloom and asked quietly if the human could help. Day-1 fixed it and refused any payment. Mi-sun's family sent thanks through official channels. It was a small diplomatic victory. Tae-ho, the cub who had first come with nothing, became Day-1's constant companion. The small cub, with the limp, spent hours in the lab, watching and learning. One day he asked, "Why do you help everyone, even cubs from clans that are not friendly to yours?" "Because everyone deserves help when they need it," Day-1 answered. "And because fixing things should not depend on politics." A cub named Eun-ji came one morning. She was older than the others, almost adolescent. She stood apart from the group, clearly nervous. When the other cubs left, she approached Day-1. "Can you fix this?" she asked, holding up her right claw. It was malformed, bent at a wrong angle. She could barely use it. Day-1's heart sank. "Eun-ji, I cannot change your body. I am sorry." Her face fell. She turned to leave. "Wait," Day-1 said quickly. "I cannot fix your claw, but I can make something to help. Will you let me try?" Hope flickered in her eyes. Yes. Day-1 spent 2 days designing and fabricating a custom grip aid. It was a fitted device that attached to Eun-ji's malformed claw and gave her the ability to grasp objects properly. When she put it on and successfully picked up a tool for the first time, she made a sound between a laugh and a sob. "It works," she whispered. "I can hold things. Practice with it," Day-1 said. "Come back if it needs adjustments." Eun-ji came back every day for a week, not because the device needed adjustments, but because she wanted to show Day-1 everything she could now do. Pick up eating utensils. Hold toys. Grip climbing equipment. Each accomplishment brought joy to both cub and human. Other cubs with difficulties started coming. One with weak vision. One with hearing problems. One who struggled with movement. Day one could not cure medical conditions, but he could create tools to help. He worked with Vraxi medical staff, combining human ingenuity with Vraxi technology. The morning ritual of repairs continued, but it had transformed into something deeper. It was not just about fixing broken objects anymore. It was about showing that everyone deserved help, that being different or damaged did not mean being worthless, that care and patience could solve problems, violence could not. 3 months after fixing the first toy, Day one sat in his lab surrounded by cubs and several adults. They were all working on various repair projects. Teaching and learning flowed in both directions. Vraxi cubs showed humans how their technology worked. Day one showed Vraxi how to approach problems creatively. Sulhi watched from the doorway. Jae-sung joined her. "This is not what I expected when humans came here," Jae-sung said quietly. "What did you expect?" Sulhi asked. "That we would study them and learn their weaknesses. Instead, our cubs learn their strengths. And those strengths are not weapons." "No," Sulhi agreed. "The strength is in building, in fixing, in caring. We Vraxi conquered the stars through force. Humans reach the stars by working together. Maybe there is wisdom in both paths." Inside the lab, Day one helped Taeyang repair a complex piece of machinery. The small cub's claws moved carefully, precisely, copying what Day one had shown him. When the device powered on successfully, Taeyang's proud chirp made everyone smile. This was the real change. Not in technology or politics, but in understanding. The most dangerous predators in known space were learning that gentleness had its own power, and they were learning it from the smallest, weakest species they had ever met. 6 months had passed since Day one fixed his first toy. The research station had become something unexpected. It was no longer just a place where humans studied Vraxi. It had become a place where both species learned from each other. Then the Galactic Council arrived. 3 ships landed near the compound, carrying diplomats and officials from multiple species. They were concerned about reports coming from the Vraxi homeworld. Reports of unprecedented behavioral changes in the apex predator species. Changes that seemed to center around one human researcher. Ambassador Won Shik led the human delegation. He was older, experienced, and clearly angry. He called Day one to a formal meeting in the station's main conference room. "Do you understand what you have done?" Won Shik demanded. "You were sent here to observe, to study, to record data. Instead, you have integrated yourself into their culture. You have changed their behavior patterns." "I fixed some toys," Day one said calmly. "You fixed their culture," Won Shik snapped. "The Vraxi are showing cooperation, resource sharing, non-violent conflict resolution. These behaviors were not present before you arrived. This violates every protocol for cultural observation." "The behaviors were always there," Day one argued. "I just gave them a reason to show them. That is not your decision to make." The Galactic Council wanted a demonstration. They wanted to understand exactly what was happening. So arrangements were made for a public showing in the compound's central plaza. Day one sat in his usual spot the next morning. Cubs approached as they always did, carrying items for repair. Council observers watched from a raised platform, taking notes and recording everything. Taeyang came first, bringing a data pad with a cracked screen. Day one examined it, replaced the screen with a spare from his kit, and tested it to make sure everything worked. Taeyang accepted it with happy sounds. Hana brought training equipment, a practice claw that had bent during exercises. Day one carefully straightened it and checked its balance. Hana thanked him with the forehead touch she had learned was important to humans. Bora brought 2 cubs who were fighting. "They are broken," she announced seriously. "They will not play nice. They will not play nice." This made several council members lean forward with interest. Day-one looked at the two cubs. "What are you fighting about?" "He said my clan is weak," one cub growled. "She said my father is a bad hunter," the other responded. Day-one considered this. "Those sound like words said in anger." "Do you actually believe those things?" Both cubs looked uncomfortable. Slowly, they shook their heads. "Then maybe you should tell each other what you really feel," Day-one suggested. "Why are you actually upset?" It took time, but eventually the truth came out. One cub felt left out when the other played with different friends. The other cub felt hurt by an earlier comment. They had lashed out instead of explaining. "So what can you do to fix this?" Day-one asked. The cubs talked. They apologized. They made promises to communicate better. By the end, they were sitting close together again, the fight forgotten. Bora nodded with satisfaction. "Fixed." One chick stared in disbelief. "You are teaching conflict resolution to apex predators." "I am listening to cubs who need help," Day-one corrected. The morning continued. More cubs, more repairs, more small acts of care and attention. The council observers filled pages with notes. Some looked disturbed. Others appeared thoughtful. Then Elder Donghyun approached. The entire plaza fell silent. This was the Vraxi who had opposed Day-one most strongly in council. He was old, traditional, and set in his ways. Donghyun carried something wrapped in dark cloth. He stopped in front of Day-one and unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a broken spear. Not just any spear. This was clearly ceremonial, etched with symbols and worn with age. "This spear broke 30 years ago," Donghyun said, his voice carrying through the plaza. "In an honor duel, I lost. I kept the pieces as reminder of defeat and shame. I watched you, human, for months. I waited to see the deception, waited for you to demand payment or tribute. Apex species do not help freely." He laid the broken pieces before Day-one. "But you ask nothing. You give only. This confuses me. So I bring this test. Can you fix something that carries such weight? Such history?" Day-one looked at the spear pieces. The break was old but clean. The weapon was beautiful work, every detail meaningful. "I can try. But Elder Donghyun, this will take time. Hours, maybe days. Can you wait?" "I have waited 30 years. I can wait more." So Day-one worked. In the center of the plaza, surrounded by watching Vraxi and council observers, he began repairs. He examined every piece. He carefully cleaned old adhesive and damage. He planned his approach. The work required every technique he knew. Bonding agents for the initial connection. Micro-welding to reinforce stress points. Clear sealant to protect and preserve. He worked with steady hands and complete focus. Cubs sat around him in quiet patience. Adults gathered, watching. The council observers stayed, unable to leave this strange performance. 3 hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. Day-one's back ached and his hands cramped, but he did not stop. This was important. Not just the spear, but what it represented. A test, an offering, a bridge. Finally, he finished. He stood slowly and presented the spear to Donghyun. "It is fixed. But Elder, the breaks are still visible. They are part of its story now. I could not hide them without destroying the original work." Donghyun took the spear. His 4 eyes examined every surface. He tested its balance, ran his claws over the repair points. The spear was whole, but the scars of its breaking remained, incorporated into its design. The old warrior was silent for a long moment. Then he did something no one expected. He knelt. An elder Vraxi warrior, scarred and proud, knelt before a human. "You understand what we did not," Donghyun said. "Broken things can be stronger for their mending. The breaks are not weakness. They are experience. You showed us this through toys and sticks. But the lesson was never about objects. It was about us." End quote. He stood and raised the spear high. "I declare this human worthy of highest honor. He teaches what we forgot." That strength comes in many forms. Sulhi stepped forward then. She addressed the council observers directly. "You think the human changed us? You are wrong. We, Vraxi, have always known we are broken. We conquered because we feared our own violence. We took because we could not imagine being given to freely." She gestured to the cubs playing peacefully nearby. Their repaired toys treasured possessions. This human showed our cubs that broken things deserve care, not disposal. That fixing takes more strength than destroying. These are not alien concepts forced upon us. These are truths we buried under centuries of survival. Jae-sung joined her. "We thought we were apex because we were strongest. But we were only most frightening. This human is weak by our standards. He has no claws, no scales, no natural weapons, yet cubs trust him completely. Adults respect him. Why? Because he showed us a different kind of strength." Wonshik looked uncomfortable. "This is still unprecedented cultural integration. Is it integration or evolution?" Hyojin challenged. "Species change. Culture adapts. The Vraxi are not losing themselves. They are finding parts of themselves they had hidden." The debate continued, but the outcome was inevitable. The Galactic Council could not stop what had already begun. They officially sanctioned the cultural exchange. Day one would stay. More humans would come to other Vraxi worlds. If the Vraxi wanted them, the Council left. Life in the compound returned to its new normal. Cubs brought items for repair. Adults came for help with difficult problems. Day one. Taught and learned in equal measure. 6 months after the Council visit, Vraxi engineers were studying human repair techniques and applying them to their own technology. The concept of preservation over replacement was spreading. A mending house was being built in the capital city, a place dedicated to fixing things rather than discarding them. 3 other Vraxi worlds had requested human den friends of their own. One morning, Taeyang approached with the hovering sphere. The original toy, the first one Day one had fixed. It was battered now from a year of constant play. The holographic projector flickered weakly. "This is broken again," Taeyang said. He was older now, more articulate. His scales had darkened with growth. Day one reached for the toy, but Taeyang pulled back. "No, I want to fix it. Will you teach me?" Day one's smile was warm and proud. "Yes, I will teach you." They sat together on the ground. Day one showed Taeyang how to open the casing, how to identify the problem, how to replace the worn-out parts. Taeyang's young claws moved carefully, precisely. When the cub made a mistake, Day one showed him how to correct it without judgment. Hana and Minho joined them. Then Bo-ra. Then a dozen other cubs. Adults came too, wanting to learn, or just to watch. Soon a crowd surrounded them, but Day one noticed only Taeyang's focused concentration. The sphere hummed to life in Taeyang's claws. The holographic stars bloomed bright and clear. The cub's triumphant sound made everyone around them chirp and rumble with approval. "I fixed it," Taeyang said with wonder. "I actually fixed it myself." "Ask." Taeyang. "Yes, you did," Day one confirmed. "You learned well." Sulhi watched from nearby. Jae-sung stood with her, one arm around her shoulders, in a gesture of affection. "The human did not fix our broken toys," Sulhi said quietly. "He fixed something we did not know was broken." "What?" asked a young warrior standing nearby. "He fixed our fear of being gentle. Our fear that caring made us weak. He showed us that the strongest thing we can do is help others." She watched Taeyang teaching another cub how to repair a different toy, passing the lesson forward. "And now our cubs teach their cubs. The change is permanent," Jae-sung rumbled agreement. "Humans are strange. They reach the stars not by being strongest, but by working together. by building and fixing and helping. We thought this made them weak. We were wrong. The afternoon stretched on. More repairs happened. More lessons were taught and learned. Cubs and adults worked side by side, fixing objects and building understanding. Day one sat in the center of it all, helping where needed, watching with quiet satisfaction. He had come to this world to study apex predators. Instead, he had shown them something they never expected to learn: that being dangerous and being kind were not opposites, that the fiercest warriors could also be the gentlest teachers, that broken things, whether objects or relationships or trust, could be mended with patience and care. The sun set over the Vraxi homeworld, painting the sky in colors that reminded Day One of Earth sunsets. He was far from home but surrounded by family. Not human family, but family nonetheless. Cubs pressed close, showing him their work. Adults discussed repair techniques and shared stories. Taeyang leaned against Day One's side, the repaired sphere floating gently above them both. "Thank you for teaching me to fix things," the young Vraxi said. "Thank you for bringing me that first broken toy," Day One replied. "You changed everything." "No," Taeyang said wisely. "You changed everything. We just had to trust you first." Perhaps they were both right. Trust and change, fixing and learning, teaching and growing. These things worked together, building something new from broken pieces. That was the real lesson. Not that broken things could be fixed, but that the act of fixing together created bonds stronger than anything violence could forge. The stars came out overhead, human stars and Vraxi stars sharing the same sky. Day One looked up at them and smiled. Somewhere out there, other species watched other stars. Maybe one day, they would all learn the same lesson: that the gentlest touch could be the strongest force, that fixing what was broken took more courage than breaking what was whole. And it all started with one human, 3 cubs, and a broken toy.